He's the director of the world's oldest art fair, Art Cologne, and he's also the grandson of the Bauhaus master Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. Daniel Hug was born in Zurich in 1968 and moved to the US at the age of 11, and he's now based in Cologne. And right now he's joining me here in the studio. Hi, Daniel. So you're the director of Art Cologne since 2008, and before you took over, the fair was in a crisis. So in 2007, the aisles were basically empty. But you were able to turn that around, and big names such as David Zwirner Gallery and Hausenwirth, they are now regularly exhibiting. And you're keeping and improving the fair. This year you've reduced the numbers of exhibitors, and you increased the prices for them. Why was this needed?
We wanted to make the fair primarily more enjoyable for our visitors. And also, I mean, over the last 3 years, the fair was taking place over the 3 levels of Hall 11 at COLOGNE'S. And I wanted to bring the young galleries, the sector Neumarkt, into the main level with all the big established galleries to hopefully generate more interest for them.
What's your business model so the fairs, I guess the exhibitors, they pay to be there?
Exactly. Galleries pay basically rent to, get a booth or to then display the artists they represent.
So you don't try to incentive them to come I've heard stories that there are fairs that say, okay, come to my fair and just if you sell something, I get a commission. To try to...
That would be really difficult to control, I think. I mean, we do have incentives. We have a sector called Neumarkt for young galleries, and this year we have 13 young galleries, and they pay about 1/3 less stand cost than the...
Probably they also have less. They can't afford that much, like a big one. Art Cologne is the world's oldest fair, as I mentioned, but other fairs have grown very big. Let's take Art Basel, for instance. It's meanwhile the biggest fair with fairs in Hong Kong, Miami, and Basel. What differentiates Art Cologne to Art Basel? Why should collectors come to you?
Well, I mean, Art Basel from the beginning was never a Swiss fair. There are not enough Swiss galleries to actually justify having a fair of 150 galleries. So it was forced from the beginning to always be international. Art Cologne, on the other hand, was created to support the German art market. So in Berlin alone, there are something like 200 galleries. In the entire Germany, there's about 400 good, interesting sort of galleries of a certain quality that we would accept. So the focus in Cologne has always been on the German art market.
But meanwhile, you're also very international.
Yes, I mean, it's definitely an international fair.
Yeah.
About over half of the, I think from the 176 galleries this year, about 95 come from outside of Germany.
But all the visitors, and they must be international as well.
I think, Mark Spiegler from Art Basel once said that he said from there, all of their visitors, about 30% come from abroad, and about 70% come from the greater region of the Dreiländereck, France and Switzerland, Germany. And I would say for our Cologne, it's about 10% from abroad and about 90% from greater Germany and then the Benelux countries. I mean, if you look at those numbers, I think Basel has about 100,000 visitors. We have about 50,000 visitors. Wow. So 10% of that is still, around 5,000 international people is a lot of international people, particularly if they're buyers, if they're curators or art historians.
But that would explain then, that Art Basel has fairs in Hong Kong, Miami, because it serves then that region.
Definitely, I think all art fairs are ultimately regional fairs. you know, they address the needs of you know, maybe a 200 up to 400 kilometer radius around the city where the fair is taking place.
In looking at Germany, you have Art Berlin, which Art Cologne took over, then Art Düsseldorf at your doorsteps, competition where Messe Schweiz was even involved in it at the beginning. Must be hard.
Well, not for our Cologne, and that was one of the reasons I was interested in. When the job was offered to me, I was like, wow, you know, this is such a historic fair. This was the first fair ever, at least how we know art fairs today. It had this long, illustrious history, and it was the leading fair from 1967 until 1994, which, you know, I mean, it's over 25 years of being the center of the world.
And what, you know, fine-tuning have you planned for Art Cologne in keeping its leading roles? Because you also mentioned, you know, there's a cycle of an art fair somehow. Maybe first tell me, what's this cycle about?
What might be interesting for one generation is less interesting for the following generation, both in terms of the exhibitors and in terms of the visitors.
So how to make sure that you're still interesting after 10 years?
You have to really listen to your exhibitors. You really have to see where the market's going. You have to try and sort of nip it in the butt before it gets out of control or has negative effects. You know, you don't want to reduce the size of the fair because you're forced to, because you don't have enough applications. You want to...
We had this the case with BASEL World, by the way.
You know, so reducing the size of our Cologne now was really to raise the quality and also to bring more focus to the young galleries,
Why are they so important? I guess, you know, I would
think... Well, that's a generational thing. You need the young galleries to kind of, you know, provide that cutting-edge aspect of the fair.
How important are then big names, you know, like mega galleries, established names that are known all over the world?
Very important. I think you need a good cross-section of everything.
Then I interviewed art dealer Eva Pressenhuber before, and she said, you know, that collectors are very rarely coming to her gallery to see an exhibition because nowadays they rather go to art fairs. So art fairs are kind of also taking away a little bit the, you know, the visiting collectors to normal exhibitions of galleries?
To some degree. I think it's more the internet, actually, that's enabled collectors all over the world to immediately access exhibitions over their computers. So, you know, a collector in Switzerland can go online and see an exhibition taking place in Beijing or an exhibition taking place in New York. And I think this, in turn, has changed art fairs from operating more on a regional level by, you know, the collectors from particular certain regions then attending their local art fair in order to meet that one gallerist they met in New York at an art fair, to then meet them in person and maybe finalize a sale. So that was initiated online.
Would you say that it's nowadays not even other fairs that are competing with you? It's, as you mentioned before, the internet?
Yeah, I mean, the internet definitely has had a big impact on the art market. In some cases, it's really improved the art market. I think social media, like Instagram, I know I even myself have bought stuff over Instagram.
You did?
So a lot of you know, I think they're tools that we have to use to our advantage, that we should...
What did you buy?
Oh, a couple things. I'm not saying it here.
Your experience in working for fairs in the US as well, in Los Angeles, you know the US market, you've been a gallerist, art dealer yourself. And I was wondering, you know, how does the profile of the collector differentiate from the US to Germany and maybe Switzerland as well?
They're all kind of the same. I mean, they all suffer from the same disease of hoarding and having to buy. I wouldn't say there's really that much of a difference, except they're kind of a rare breed.
Because once you said in an interview that in the US you have very rich collectors, while in Germany maybe also the middleman would collect art.
True, true. I mean, there are subtle differences. I mean, what I remember, it's like you know, German collectors tend to withhold their, you know, personal information, whereas American collectors will stick their business card in your face and you know, say, send me a picture of that, and how much is that, and here's my information. Whereas a German collector will like inquire, how much is this work of art, and then, okay, do you have a business card? I'll take yours. You know, they won't give up their information.
I guess Swiss fall into that category as well, a little bit. Like
Probably. Although, I mean, I did the Liste Fair in Basel many years ago for about 8 years, and I remember Swiss collectors being very open and very forthcoming.
But you also want to make the art market accessible not only to the very top 1%, I read, but you also want, you know, collectors such as lawyers, doctors to collect art. Why? Like, how do you want?
I mean, this year at Art Cologne, we're focusing the entrance hall on multiples and additions. So, I mean, this is one way to enable, you know, normal everyday people to buy artworks by important artists.
But you also said that you don't feel, you know, why art fairs? Why are they needed? For whom are they needed? It's not for the big brands, right? That's what you said.
That was in
Explain
terms
it,
of
yeah.
exhibitors. I think art, you know, the galleries that really need to do art fairs, or the exhibitors, are the people in the middle. You know, the galleries, the mid-level galleries, the young galleries. These are the ones that need to build up a stronger network.
So not the big names.
Well, I think for the big names, it's good to reach out to their clients that live in these regions. But it's ultimately, I think we benefit the mid-level galleries, the younger galleries.
You yourself, you're from a very artistic family. As I mentioned, your grandfather was the famous Hungarian-American artist and Bauhaus teacher, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. How did that influence you?
Oh, I never met him in person. He died in 1946, but I mean, my mother was a great influence, his daughter. And from what I read about Moholy, I think Moholy felt art is much more than just pretty pictures and pretty sculptures that you put in your house. Art carries meaning with it. It has the ability to impact and affect people's lives. You
yourself studied photography, painting, art history in Chicago. You tried out being an artist first. Then you became a businessman. Why?
Attempting to be an artist made me a better gallerist. I was really more, how do you say, critical in what artists presented to me during studio visits. And it was really on a side note. I was hoping to maybe eventually show my own work or make connections to show my own work. And then the gallery just did really well, and I decided to stick with that.
Until you were 11 years old, you were in Zurich, so you're Swiss as well, American. How did Zurich influence you, you know, this childhood here?
A lot. I mean...
what is Swiss about you?
There's a little Swiss guy inside me. No, what I loved about... I mean, growing up in Zurich, in the Altstadt, I remember... I mean, we would go to the Kunsthus for openings, and yeah, I mean, Zurich has always been. I mean, it's you might say it's the heart of the art world in Switzerland.
Is it still? I mean, we have Basel.
Yes, definitely.
Basel,
I mean, Basel is important one, you know, in June when everyone goes there for Art Basel. But I think Zurich has all the galleries. Zurich is, I would say, the Hauptstadt der Kunst.
What are the challenges of the art market nowadays? I mean, where do you see it going?
I think challenges in the art market kind of remain the same. You know, it's difficult. It's difficult at all times to sell difficult work, work that transcends the ordinary. It's not easy.
Why? Because it's something we don't need, right? No one needs art.
Sure. I mean, we all need. I like to think that we all need art. Of course, it's easier to sell, a Picasso or a famous artist, but if the art is a little more cutting edge, more challenging, if it's using non-traditional media, it's not easy. It's still difficult, even for the established professional galleries.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.